This is the hour, the Steven hour, and we are back with another 007 movie review. And in today's installment, we will be reviewing Goldfinger. Now, before we get into it, I just want to quickly just give a quick, brief background for the film before we get onto the casting. Well, first off, by the time the producers, Cubby Broccoli and Harry Saltzman, came for the third film, they decided that they wanted the third installment to be bigger and badder. Terrence Young, who had directed the first two installments, was unavailable, so they went to a very unknown Guy Hamilton to direct this installment. He will later go on to direct other installments in the series, and really made his stamp on the series with this film. Many of the people from the previous film again return, and here, this is the film that many would consider as the best Bond film ever. It laid the groundwork. A lot of the things you would expect from a Bond film came from this one, and it was a huge blockbuster hit. But sadly, Ian Fleming, who created the film, books that were being adapted, sadly will not be able to see this film as he shortly died. I think it was 8 months before before the film's release. And it was a shame because if he lived, he would have gone to have seen the full, not just impact of this film being a huge hit, but the craze that it started. Anyway, so how do I feel about this film? Well, until then, well, first off, let's get into the casting. Of course, Sean Connery here returned in the role, here in his third debut, and something I find interesting about all the Bonds, when they usually do it's considered that their third film, they bring their best performance. But for me, Connery was already good in his first two outings, and he didn't grow, and it didn't have to be those actors that, had to slowly grow into the part. He was great from the get-go. Our main leading lady for this film is, I'm not even lying, the name is Pussy Galore, played by Honor Blackman. Our main villain, of course, is Auric Goldfinger, played by Gerb Frobe, who, believe it or not, was actually dubbed throughout the movie. And it's so seamlessly, you don't even know it. I was actually surprised, because after these movies, I would always watch special features, and I was surprised he was dubbed. I thought, nah, he was dubbed. Yeah. And here, of course, we have the proper Bond henchman. Now, I've always said the Red Grant was the first Bond henchman, but he's truly the first proper henchman. What they are, they're tough, they're strong, and they're the silent type. Oddjob, played by Harold Sakata, famous for throwing his top hat that is razor sharp. Here, of course, we have two female characters. The characters are sisters. We have Jewel Masterson and Tilly Masterson, played by Shirley Eaton and Danya Mallet. Hopefully those names were pronounced right. Here, of course, we have more of the, MI6 regulars. M by Bernard Lee, Moneypenny by Lois Maxwell, Q by Desmond Llewellyn, and Felix Leiter, portrayed by Linda? I can't really pronounce the name, but hopefully it's right. But something I want to point out is Felix Leiter is played by a different actor. You see, the thing is, Felix Leiter role, there's no one actor who really comes to reprise it. It's always like a new actor constantly taking over the role literally every time. Something I find just a bit jarring, but anyway, enough of that. Let's get into the movie review. Our movie begins off with the gun barrel scene, literally all the time. Still played by the stuntman who did it in the first two outings. After that, we then are introduced to a sort of warehouse kind of facility, warehouse facility, but kind of something like that. And coming out of the water is Bond in some kind of diving suit, wearing a duck on his head. This is the film that really introduced a lot of the a bit of the over-the-top silliness that the film be known for. After knocking out a guard and breaking and sneaking his way into this facility, he plants explosives and leaves, and then he takes off the diving suit to reveal a tuxedo. He then walks into a bar where this woman is dancing, and just as he lights his cigarette, an explosion in the background, and it's so cool, and just how like he just pulls it off. This like suaveness that Connery does is absolutely great. And then goes meet the girl back, backstage, I guess you could. No, not really backstage, but in her room. And as Connery does his classic wooing, a guy sneaks up behind him, but Bond sees him through the girl's eye. Again, a little bit of absurdity slightly introduced here, more so than the previous two. And the two begin to fight. Bond wins by throwing him into the bathtub filled with water, and then throws in a fan that causes him to be electrocuted. He then, of course, says a one-liner, puts on his suit jacket, and leaves. Here we are then introduced to the title sequence with the movie's score. Goldfinger, played by Shirley Bassey, I think. Wait, let me double check. Yeah, Shirley Bassey, who sings the song Goldfinger, and here the naked woman and who's painted gold, but here like these like projections of scenes for the movie on her. Automatically, it's one of the most iconic moments of the series, and started where artists would come in to do their songs for the movie. And it's just fantastic. It's literally it's just marvelous. And then after that, we then get into the movie. Here we're in Miami, where it turns out Bond is kind of on leave/vacation. Then Felix Leiter turns up and asks him to keep an eye on this person named Auric Goldfinger, who is our main villain of the movie, and how he's kind of a wealthy businessman. And he's British, and he claims that he's supposed to be British, even though he doesn't sound like it. Here he meets up with a friend to play cards, where they bet money on it. Automatically, Bond senses something's wrong and makes his way to Goldfinger's hotel room, where he finds a woman who is communicating to Goldfinger through a radio, and is secretly looking at him. Goldfinger and his friend play cards. This results in Bond classically messing with the villain, humiliating him, and taking his girl. After that, pretty much Bond spends most a bit of the film, or at least a minute at least, banging Jill. And as he goes to get more drinks, he gets knocked out by a shadowy figure that we don't fully see. When he recovers, we then get to see one of the most memorable, one of the most iconic images, not just in this film, but the series itself. Jill Masterson dead, but painted gold. It is just iconic, and it's slightly unsettling a little bit, at least to me it is. After that, Bond is of course back in MI6's M's office, and is reprimanded for basically he was supposed to shadow Goldfinger, not do this. And now Goldfinger has left and has pretty much jeopardized an operation. But in order to save face, Goldfinger tells him, M tells Bond to come back later, where they plan to have like a sort of dinner, like dinner with this official, to be discussed more with what's Goldfinger really up to. Here, of course, we get a Moneypenny scene, and honestly, compared to the one what we got from Russia with Love, I don't really feel it's that memorable of a scene, but it happened. Okay. We're then followed by a scene where Bond is being briefed that Goldfinger is apparently a gold smuggler, but they can't find a way to prove it. Also know that he's a legitimate, again, we're reminded he's a legitimate businessman, but again, we're reminded that they still haven't figured out how he's smuggling gold, across the border. As a result, Bond is then given a rare piece of gold bullion, giving Goldfinger's obsession with gold in order to entice him in. This scene is then followed by Bond going to Cube's lab for the first time in the series, and here where we see Q testing out new gadgets to be used later in the field, and of course Bond is given one of the most famous spy cars in cinema history, the Aston Martin DB5. We are shown of all its gadgets, his ejector seat, machine guns, smokescreen, oil slick, and a tracking device which you can use to track people, both their big size and small size. And here I think Desmond Llewellyn really gets the proper version of Q portrayal as basically a person who's always annoyed with Bond because he's always childish around his gadgets. Again, great scene. It's then after that we follow up with Bond in a golf course where he plays golf with Goldfinger. Here they are acquainted, they get introduced, and also Bond meets his henchman Oddjob for the first time. The golf scene is a lot of fun. It sounds boring, but it's actually quite a lot of fun. The scene ends, of course, with Bond winning the game, despite the fact Goldfinger trying to cheat. And also here we get to see what Oddjob can do with his special hat. This whole scene just sets up knowing that Bond is going to face Oddjob later in the film. Bond is slowly tracking Goldfinger, but while he does, he also runs into Tilly Madison, or at least a strange woman, who is not revealed to be, later in the film, to be Jill Masterson's sister. Of course, Goldfinger gets to his destination. He revealed that he's planning something called Operation Grand Slam, and here we find out how he's smuggling gold. It turns out that the Rolls Royce that Goldfinger has been driving actually turns into gold. They take pieces off and they melt it into gold. Again, a little bit unbelievable, but surprisingly, I can actually buy it. But of course, Till Masterson screws up Bond from further listening to more what Operation Grand Slam is, and results in a car chase. Here, Bond uses all the gadgets, and it's a lot of fun. Eventually, the scene ends with Bond being cornered, Tilly Madison's dead, and of course, Bond is quickly captured. Another iconic moment of the series, and something that has been in the mind of all spy films since, is Bond being strapped down to a table and a laser going up his crotch. Slowly going up his crotch. It's a really tense moment, and for us guys, it's really one that just echoes how painful it would be, something like that getting closer and closer to your groin. The only way Bond got out of that situation is by telling Goldfinger that he knows Operation Grand Slam and has messaged it to people at headquarters. Goldfinger, of course, says he's bluffing, but Bond says, can you really take the chance? Seeing no other way and seeing more value in Bond being alive, he decides not to kill him, but simply tranquilize him. Bond then wakes up after the tranquilizer gas on a plane, where he comes face to face with this movie's main female villain. Not female villain, but main Bond girl, Pussy Galore. That scene alone, the introduction and her name, just cracks me up every single time. It is absolutely hilarious. Of course, a lot of fun little hijinks is played while on the plane. M is later informed by Felix Leiter that Bond has left for Kentucky, and as a result, Felix and his CIA buddies quickly get up and go to Goldfinger's race course. Bond is kept prisoner there at Goldfinger's headquarters, while Goldfinger has a meeting with some notorious gangsters, who, thanks to them, have helped smuggle stuff in to be used for his plot, to essentially attack Fort Knox, where all the gold is being reserved. He explains the plan, how he plans to break in by using a nerve gas to knock out everyone, and use a special laser to cut open the door. Dynamite the fence, but before Bond can find out anything more after escaping from his cell and overhearing this, he is quickly subdued by Pussy and taken away. One of the gangsters does not want to be a part of the plan and leaves. Now this is a bit like I find weird. Now Goldfinger explains this to all the gangsters but decides to kill them off. That makes no sense. If he originally planned to kill them off, then why would he tell the plan? My theory is he planned for all the gangsters to get on board with this and be a part of it, but realizing that because one ain't gonna get involved, maybe the others will drop out too. And feel it's in his best interest just to wipe him out. Again, that's just my theory. I don't really think it's real, but yeah. The gangster is quickly disposed of in a very fun way, although Bond tried to get a message to Felix by secretly planting the tracking device on the guy along with a piece of paper indicating to Felix what's about to happen. Here, of course, there's the scene where, and of course, after that's all wrapped up, the two scenes transpire. One is where Goldfinger reveals Bond the whole plan. You see, up until this point, and even with the plan revealed that he's breaking into Fort Knox, you can naturally assume that he plans to steal all the gold. Though it isn't, though this is very impossible, as you have to quickly get a large sum of that whilst you have the entire US military coming at you. Of course, Goldfinger said, did I really mention I was gonna steal it? Or, something along those lines. It is then revealed that he plans to radiate the gold, making it useless for at least a very long time before it could be safely usable again. This way, his gold will rise in value as being, as being far more valuable, increase his stock. Basically, Goldfinger is a crooked businessman who will do any crooked means to get financial security, but at the same time, he's obsessed with gold, its color. So again, pretty interesting stuff. And then, of course, there's this scene where Bond and Pussy Galore essentially, well, let's just say wrestling, because I don't exactly know how to describe it. It's something that definitely wouldn't work today. Though, to be fair, this was made in the 60s, and you could possibly get away with that. However you interpret the scene, it does help the plot of the film. You see, what ends up happening is Pussy Galore actually switches allegiances. We later find out in the film that she notified Washington about the, attack on Fort Knox, and just as the gases have been, spread, because Pussy Galore is a pilot and is training a bunch of pilots, and sprays it all over the all around Fort Knox. All the guards are knocked out throughout the whole city. It's a really great scene, and of course Goldfinger and his men go to attack Fort Knox. They break into the vault, which is a fantastic film set created by Ken Adams, who actually was on the first film when he created that set. And of course Bond is put in the vault with the bomb handcuffed to it, and just as Goldfinger and his boys are about to leave, it turns out the gas that was sprayed was actually fake, and basically every military guy pretended to faint, and Felix Leiter is also there. And next thing you know, a gunfight breaks out between Goldfinger's guys and of course the good guys. This will be a trait that will be used in the Bond films quite a lot, believe it or not. And yeah, it's a pretty fun scene. But just as that happened, Goldfinger quickly closes the vault, kills one of his guys to protect his identity, and changes clothing into a military uniform, pretending he's a US soldier. He and Pussy Galore quickly escape. However, while locked in the vault, Oddjob, still loyal to his master, fights Bond as Bond quickly gets himself out of the handcuffs and fights Oddjob, losing very badly. Eventually, Bond will defeat defeat Oddjob, but not the way you think. You would think it would be by using his top hat, which would be a poetic, but it's not. He actually electrocutes him in one of the most famous deaths of not just Goldfinger, but the Bond series, where the henchmen will go out in a spectacular fashion. And Harold Takada, you see, during the scene, when Harold Takada went to grab his top hat, because see, it's stuck between these bars, and Bond managed to electrify the bars, therefore when Oddjob touches his top hat, he get electrified. Harold Takada was meant to let go, but he held on, leaned back against the bars, and fell over. The reason why he did, because the director didn't tell him he, didn't say cut or let go. A very interesting, a very memorable scene. Of course, as that quickly happens, the US Army finally makes their way through the vault and quickly towards the bomb. They defuse it quickly, just in time, with 0.007 seconds left, proving that this film is willing to be very humorous, as well as action-packed and serious. After this, Bond is then put on a private jet to go to Washington to have a few drinks with the president for thanking for stopping the disaster. Just as he's on the plane, it's revealed it's actually been taken over by Goldfinger, who plans to fly the plane to Cuba, but wants to get one last revenge on Bond for ruining his plans. This results in a fight between Bond and Goldfinger, which Goldfinger would fire a bullet through the plane, or plane's window, resulting in Goldfinger being sucked out. It's a very cheesy effect, and something that hasn't dated well, but I actually find the death to be actually pretty gruesome if you think about it. Imagine being sucked out of a plane whilst in midair. Of course, Bond quickly makes his way to the cockpit where Pussy Galore is trying to fly the plane. They quickly manage to eject themselves, and while this is happening, at the same time, we get cutscenes that Felix Leiter is also trying to find out, what's going on. And Felix quickly gets in a helicopter and starts a rescue party to find Bond. But of course, Bond decides to, end the usual film, finally getting the girl, and it's a pretty good scene, and Connery just makes it work. The film ends reminding audiences that Bond will return in Thunderball, the next Bond film. Goldfinger is considered by many the true gold standard for a Bond film. Everything was introduced in this film. All the formulas that were slowly built up in the previous two finally came full circle for the third installment. In the Bond films, we would get fantastic locations, marvelous sets, Q gadgets, fancy cars, beautiful women, and villainous henchmen, lots of action. We'll have some comedy, we'll have some laughs, we'll have some seriousness, some tense moments, but for the most part, let's just enjoy it. And that quote is taken from Guy Hamilton. Guy Hamilton and all the creators of Goldfinger really brought out one of the greatest Bond films of all time. Really, all the gold standards are here. But just like the first two, there are some stuff that are pretty dated, some stuff that are a bit too silly, at least I find a bit too silly for my liking, but it's still a fantastic film. And really, this film kicked off not just the Bond to be in the public consciousness as a pop culture icon, but it also kicked off the spy craze of the late 60s, as many TV shows like The Man from U.N.C.L.E., The Saint, Get Smart, and basically any type of spy movie or TV show came out in the late 60s because of the huge spy craze. Goldfinger is one of the most memorable villains, although despite the fact the plot isn't as, if you think about it, when compared the plot to From Russia with Love, which was very more depth and a really deep and in-depth film, this one is just overall fun. And it is absolutely fantastic in grand scale. I can't praise this film anymore for being what it is. Just a fantastic film. Very fantastic, very memorable, and overall enjoyable. Pussy Galore by Honor Blackman is first off, a very different Bond girl. The usual ones were really, would swoon to Bond. Though Honey Rider did present some strong independence. Here, this one, you really feel that she's really the bad girl, though she turns to Bond's side. And honestly, out of all the Connery Bond girls, I find her to be one of my absolute favorites. Another thing I also want to point out is that slightly hinted she's a lesbian. Slightly hinted. Goldfinger, memorable main villain, but basically, if I want to point out something, he's basically just a crooked businessman / gangster type character who wants to get rich. No, more businessman than gangster, but his gold obsession makes him a bit more colourful and helps him stand out amongst the crowd. And Harold Sakata as Oddjob really laid the groundwork for memorable Bond henchmen to follow. He's the strong, silent type, and just that clothing, you would think about it, it's something that just wouldn't work, but they just make it work, and I applaud them for doing so. Overall, this is a fantastic Bond film, and a film that for any hardcore Bond fan need to watch. The formula was laid there, and this is the film that many people say no one has still yet to top how good this film was. Like I said, it's a fantastic film. And that's it. This is my review of Goldfinger, an iconic Bond film. It laid the groundwork and it kicked Bond off to the mainstream that was still going on for 50 years. Join us next time as we review our next Bond film coming up, Thunderball. So tune in for that. Until then, this has been the Steven Hour, and so long for now.